All right, welcome back. Linkage Institutions, Unit 3, Elections. We're going to look at Presidential Preference Primaries. All right, so first I just want to kind of put you at ease, because if you just watched that last video and your head is spinning, because I went through a lot of things really quickly, that stuff is going to keep coming back in this video and the next video, so I think it's going to make more sense, okay? So please don't give up on me. I know that last video threw a lot of ideas at you in a short amount of time. Hang in there, all right? So we have a different type of primary here. So we have primaries and caucuses. Okay, so again, let's just review. Primary, the purpose of a primary is to choose a candidate's, to choose a party's candidate for the general election. So they're choosing who they want to be their candidate in the general. Then we have this thing called a caucus. A caucus has the same exact purpose. It says it's a meeting of party members to choose a candidate. Okay, so what's the difference? The difference is pretty simple, and so I would add another line here and I would write about this. It's not typed here, but you need to make sure you're good on the difference and similarities between primaries and caucuses. Okay, similarity is they are both for the same purpose, and that purpose is to choose a candidate to be for your party in the general election. The method is the difference. In a primary works like a normal election. It's where you wake up or get off work or go over on your lunch break, you drive to a polling precinct, you go in, you give them your name, they find your name, they check you off, you go in, you vote, you walk away, you drive home, you go about the rest of your day. You vote and leave. It's a relatively simple, easy process. A caucus, on the other hand, is a meeting of party members, and you can see the pictures that I've shown, that top left-hand corner and the bottom right, and the bottom center corner, or not corner, but the bottom center. Those are actual pictures of caucuses, I should say, in the state of Iowa. Iowa, every single presidential election, they are the first state to have a caucus or primary, and they have a caucus. So people actually sit down and meet, they give speeches in favor of candidates, they talk, they discuss, they debate, and then they vote. And you can see the people on the top left-hand corner, they're voting by holding their hands up. They are literally raising their hands, and then somebody's in front going to count the votes for each candidate. The top right-hand corner, those are paper ballots, and again, this is real. They pass out little slips of paper, a square of paper to everybody, and then you just write a name. And so if you zoomed in on this picture, I know it's kind of tough, but you can see that there is a name under each one of those, and there's a number circled because they counted up the paper ballots, and that's how they choose who wins in each of the caucus places. So you go to some place like a high school gym, like a cafeteria, a community center, a rec hall, something like that, and that's where these caucuses are held. The bottom center, I'll tell you about that one in class a little bit. That's how Democrats do it. They do it almost like a style of playing four corners, where everybody literally gets up and moves to be in a certain spot to show what candidate they're with. But the idea here is that caucuses are a much longer, more drawn-out process than a primary. In all honesty, the major thing you need to know is that they are both, primaries and caucuses, used to choose their party's candidate. The way that they're different is that a primary is just voting in an election. A caucus, though, is a meeting of party members. So you have to be a Republican or you have to be a Democrat to show up, and then you sit down, and that's how you spend your evening. So it is a much more in-depth, in detail process. Okay, so now we're going to get into the delegates part of it. So remember, when you win a state, you are rewarded by getting delegates. And depending on which method your state uses or which party you're in, will depend on how many delegates you get. So the first option, this is the simple one, all right, and then we'll get to the other one. We have something called a winner-take-all primary. That is where the candidate with the most votes wins all of the state's delegates. So all you need to do is come in first place. You don't need a majority. If you win one more vote than anybody else, even if that's with like 30%, which can easily happen when you have so many candidates. In fact, in Iowa, the first caucus of the year with the Republicans, at that point they still had, I want to say, 14 candidates at that point, and so nobody got 30%. So your winner was in the 20s. So nowhere near a majority, but it doesn't matter. If that state is winner take all, which Iowa does not happen to be, but regardless, then you get all of the delegates from that state. Florida is my example because Florida is a winner take all state, and again, You might not be able to see these numbers quite clearly. Donald Trump won the state of Florida with 45% of the vote. Marco Rubio came in second with 27.5%. The state of Florida had exactly 100 delegates that we got to send. So that means 100 people from Florida were going to go to the national convention for the Republican Party and say who they were voting for on behalf of the voters in Florida. All right, that's who they represent, is the people in Florida, the Republicans in Florida. Because Donald Trump won the most, even though it's not the majority, he won 45% of the vote, he received all 100 delegates. Okay, Marco Rubio came in second with 27.5%. He received 0 delegates. So, basically the idea here, this is really, really simple. You win more than anybody else, you get all of the delegates from that state. This typically causes the primary process to be over much quicker because somebody can easily run up their score and get enough delegates to win. So this is for a quicker method of doing a primary. By the way, Republicans do that one. Winner take all is associated with Republicans. This one, proportional representation, this is associated with Democrats, and I would absolutely make a note of that in your notes. So Democrats do this one, proportional representation. Candidates win delegates in proportion to their percentage of the total votes won. So again, I'm going to give you Florida. Florida, for the Democrats, has proportional representation. Hillary won the state of Florida. She won with 64.5% of the vote, so she got way more than Donald Trump got. However, because we are a proportional representation primary, you can see there, hopefully you can see these numbers. So she won 64.5%, Bernie won 33%, but because it's proportional, she got 101 delegates, he got 51 delegates. So he got about half as many delegates as her, despite only getting 1/3 of the votes in the state. But that means that he got about 1/3 of the delegates. So this is going to make it take much longer because even the losing candidate keeps winning delegates in state after state. So even when they lose, they still get delegates. So it's going to be a much longer process when you do proportional. Some people argue that it's more fair. This definitely benefited Bernie. If Democrats had been doing winner take all like Republicans, Hillary would have beaten him by March, I believe. Like she would have won way, way earlier than she did. So this makes it last much longer. All right, we have a term called front loading. Front loading is when states, because remember, every state has their primary at a different spot, different part in time. This year, Florida had theirs in March. We have been known for doing this front loading thing in the past, though. Front loading is when states choose earlier dates to have their primary. Well, why would they do that? So you see like the picture, the cartoon, it's like they're leapfrogging each other trying to be in the front. Why do they do that? Well, early states have more influence and receive more attention from candidates and media. Because typically, we know who's going to win the primaries by the end of February, beginning of March. We basically know. Almost every single time. So that means if your primary is in April, May, or June, that you really don't have very much influence, that the media isn't going to focus on your state as much, the candidates aren't going to focus, so states try to compete to have earlier dates for their primary, and that's called front loading. And then we have our last term here, just a little housekeeping here, Super Tuesday. It is often the most important day of primary season. The day with the most primaries. And so this is from this year, 2016. For the Republicans, remember you needed 1,237 delegates to win. On Super Tuesday alone, there were 13 states that had their primaries. 13 different states on one day. And so there were 595 delegates available on that day. So that one day went a long way to deciding who is going to win their primary. It's often the day that kind of ends anybody's long shot hopes because once they lose on Super Tuesday, it's kind of obvious that they can't come back anymore. This has been a LaMoney production.